Welcome to another edition of the RTI Knowledge Center. The question today is, what is bump steer? Well, that's very easy for you to understand. Bump steer is basically when you push up and down on the front bumper of your car, and if your tires go in and out in this motion, that means that there's steer in the front end that's either bumping in or bumping out, depending on how the suspension goes. So now you put this in perspective. If the wheels are going like this, that's going to affect handling. Now, granted, that's an over-exaggeration, but it's still the same theory. So we want to make sure that as the front end goes up and down through its travel, that there's minimal amount of movement from side to side of the front end to make sure that the driver has complete control and that the front end is not trying to do something that he's not aware of. If you change ride heights, you're going to change bump steer, because bump steer is regulated off of where the inner tie rod mounts to the center link and the outer end of the tie rod where it mounts to the spindle. And so when those need to be matched up so that the tires, when the car goes through its suspension, goes up and down, and like I said, the wheels are not moving like this. So the first thing that I recommend if you decide to do this, number one, you're going to need a bump steer gauge to be able to do this. What I recommend is making sure that my steering is square, and that's that X fashion between the idler arm and the pitman arm, and the idler arm and the pitman arm, so that the steering is completely centered in the car. So then you're ready to do this. Now the other thing, what we did is we got our ride height center to center measurement of our shock. This one was actually 16 3/4. So we took our new Weers bump steer ratchet and put it in its place so that we can move it up and down without taking the spring out, and we can still have the suspension loaded as normal. So we turn the scale, or turn our digits on. Always zero everything. Now, if you notice that to get this at ride height, with this side, these plates actually need to be higher, or these numbers need to be higher. So we've got to write this down, that we're starting at the 1.5 inch mark, and both of them. We level our bubble, so everything is square. We've got everything square. Both of these are in line so that they can travel up and down just like they should. And so now we'll get started. On the left front, I always recommend checking the bump on the first 2 inches of compression and the first 1 inch to 1 3/4 inches of rebound. And what that means is we let it go down as if if this tire was hanging, and when you're coming up off the corner and that tire is just kind of floating over there. And then we check the bump on compression side of it, so when you go into the corner and the car drops down on the left front, it's square. Now, right now, we preset this bump, so I know exactly where the bump is, but I'm going to go through the motions and explain what we actually do. So we've got this thing set now. I'm going to actually do the -1 inch first. So there, we actually let this whole assembly down 1 inch in the rebound side of it, and we're at 0.277 on the front and 0.280 on the rear. So as you can see, it's very slightly towing out. Now, it's very common to get this so that when it tows out on compression, that it's going to be possibly towing in at a very minimal amount in the extreme amount of travel. Now, when it's in this extreme amount of travel on a rebound, there's not a lot of load on this tire, so I'm not super concerned about that. I want to make sure that it bumps out slightly when the car has all the load on it getting into the corner.